Browsing the Lost Media Wiki forums is a great way to discover new topics you weren't familiar with before, and in some cases, even opens your eyes to entirely new areas of the community that you might not even be aware of. I check the forums pretty often, and always come across searches from content deep within the cartoon category, which I love talking about, or even something that is so bizarre, only a couple people are even familiar with the topic at all. But browsing the forums is also an interesting way to gain insight about the community itself, and there are quite a few threads dedicated to discussion about certain aspects of it. Most notably, the Unpopular Opinions About Lost Media thread has always caught my attention, and it opens the door for interesting debates on what works or what could be improved in the community. Within the variety of different opinions that were discussed, there was one point that I saw brought up more often than the others, and that's international lost media, or the lack of interest in it. While I am definitely one of those people that prefers cartoon lost media, or finding content from my own country here in the US, I do agree that there are plenty of interesting topics from around the world that simply don't get brought up nearly as often or at all. I've actually covered a few different pieces of international lost media before, but it wasn't so much directly about their origin. Today, I think it would be a really cool idea to change that and discuss several pieces of lost media from around the world, with some help from another lost media YouTuber, Sakura Stardust. So let's start with a topic that, despite its obscurity, had a large dedicated search effort to those who knew about it. The first stop on our globe-trotting lost media trip takes us to Canada, and I gotta say, unless you're completely familiar with a piece of Canadian lost media, you might not even know it actually came from there. Topics like the Super Y pilot and the Jimmy Two Shoes pilot are indeed Canadian, but they're often grouped into categories with Nickelodeon or Disney animated series. This topic, however, isn't well known outside of Canada at all, for the fact that it's extremely obscure. This is My Special Book, a live-action television series made for kids that aired on YTV Junior and Treehouse TV, which are similar to Nick Jr. and Nickelodeon here in the US. The show takes place inside of a storybook, which is opened at the beginning of every episode, and reveals the main character, named Book Girl, who goes on adventures with her friends that all live inside of the book itself, which is closed to end each episode. Surprisingly, the series had a pretty good run from 2000 to 2007, before its cancellation as a result of programming changes to Treehouse TV, which sent the show into obscurity and would begin the search for its content nearly a decade later. The first place I ever saw My Special Book mentioned was a very popular thread on the Lost Media Wiki forums from 2017, which discussed the show's existence. Most people had vague memories of the show, describing it as trippy and bizarre, but with the exception of a single image that was found online, there was no other evidence that the show even existed. Several users did a lot of digging back then, and were able to unearth a wide variety of listings for the show, information that the show had actually begun production in 1998, and premiered in May 2000. It was also discovered from a Treehouse TV schedule archive that My Special Book aired every morning at 10 a.m. But even with all of this groundbreaking information having been discovered for the search, content from the show itself remained to be seen, and only that single image had remained as the only visual evidence of its existence online. But there was a chance that more was to be unearthed. With some more digging in the thread, the resumes of the producer and musical composer of the show were discovered, and contact was made asking for more information about its creation and whether or not either person still had anything from it. Unfortunately, they didn't, and the search would hit another dead end, but not before confirming that the series ran for a total of 90 episodes before being taken off the air, which was reconfirmed by a list that was recovered. This is a huge amount of content to have gone missing, so several different ideas were suggested on where to look for more of it, including contacting more of the staff and even the classic, try to find home recordings of the show from VHS tapes. However, these search efforts didn't really lead anywhere at the time, and for the next year or two, the search continued similar to other long-term searches in the community. Small progress was made, but nothing that directly led to finding the episodes, though it seemed like it would only be a matter of time before content resurfaced, considering how much of it was made for the show, and that ended up being the case. I had been following the thread on and off for a while at this point, and to my surprise, in 2019, the first clip resurfaced in a YouTube upload, and then a year later, Canadian Childhood, who spent a lot of time researching the topic, unearthed the entire first season of the series, to everyone's surprise. He was even able to confirm that my special book aired in 2007, contrary to the belief that it was off the air by 2006. The description of the video says the episodes are master tape quality, so they must have come from somewhere official, but I couldn't find an exact source for where they came from. However, the show is only partially found, as the second season is still missing. But this is far more content than anyone who was part of the search was ever expecting would resurface, so it's a big win. While my special book is one of the more popular pieces of lost media from Treehouse TV, there's so much more content that's been lost from them, and even other work from the producer who worked on the show. It's still surprising to me that a show with a 7-year run had no visual evidence for as long as it did, even from the network where it aired. But the dedication to getting it found in this thread is really a high point for the community.
It wouldn't be an International Pieces of Lost Media video without a segment dedicated to anime, because the rabbit hole of lost content from that genre goes very deep. There are so many different topics that have been discussed by the community over the years, several of which are still being searched for today. The JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Phantom Blood movie, as well as the uncut Fist of the North Star theatrical release, remain some of the most popular. However, there is another piece of lost anime that is considered a classic for how long ago it was first brought up and how a good portion of its content is still missing to this day, despite how long the search for it has been. It's also a topic that doesn't really get mentioned as often as it used to be, but maybe we can change that by discussing Doraemon 73. Even if you're not into anime, I'm sure you've seen Doraemon in passing before. It's a long-running manga and anime series that had a successful TV adaptation back in 1979, and shortly after the series ended in 2005, a reboot was created and continues to run even today. However, what a lot of people might not be aware of is the anime series that existed before the 1979 one was even created, the first adaptation of Doraemon that remains lost and had a troubled production history. Referred to as Doraemon 73 by the community, this series made its debut in 1973 on Nippon TV Network, which was 6 years before the more well-known 1979 series. It ran from April 1st until September 30th and amassed 26 episodes, each in 2 separate segments for a total of 52 pieces of animation. Despite the decent length of this series, it resulted in an early cancellation and ultimately a poor archival. It's been stated that Doraemon 73 did well in ratings, contrary to the popular belief that it was cancelled due to poor performance and was actually expected to continue its TV run for another year. However, several internal problems at its production company resulted in a sudden cancellation. The studio that made Doraemon 73, called Nippon TV Video, ran into budget issues during the creation of the original 26 episodes, on top of financial issues the studio itself was facing. On top of these major problems with its production, there was also a change in management when the old president of TV Nippon resigned and was replaced by a new president that did not have any interest in continuing the series, and eventually the studio was dissolved. While production of any new content for the series wasn't going to happen, it got even worse for the content that had already been made, as film reels and other production materials were sold off to cover the studio's debt and were not archived. There has been a long-standing rumor that claims Nippon TV Video organized a cremation to destroy the series' content. However, production chief Masumi Jun has confirmed that that never occurred. Despite how difficult to locate the materials from Doraemon 73 have become over the years, several pieces of its content have survived and have since become properly archived. Most notably, there was a find in 1995 of episodes 18 and 20 through 26 stored at Studio Rush completely intact with the exception of 2 episodes missing their audio. Years later, in 1998 and in 2003, Masumi Jun was also able to recover even more. The article on the Lost Media Wiki contains a detailed chart documenting which segments have been saved and which ones are still lost, with some claims and rumors about where the other ones might be. It is believed that Masumi Jun still has the majority of this content but is unable to publicly release it. Masumi went into more detail in an email conversation that reads in part, "I got lots of emails from people saying that they wanted to see clips from the show. So I made a membership page with a username and password and uploaded the opening and ending. Within a few minutes, I heard that someone with access to the page had uploaded both clips to another page, 2chan. I removed the clip from my site right away, but because I gave it away for only a moment, it is now all over YouTube and other sites. Due to me uploading it, I got into some trouble with the law. I am resolving the issue now, but because of that, I will refrain from uploading the footage online." Even if his footage had been released, there would still be a portion of segments that are completely lost, and unfortunately, legal reasons prevent official re-releases from occurring. It's still a relief to know that some of this content is saved, and the dedication of the community will continue to keep the search for Doraemon 73 and its legacy alive.
It seems like lost dubs are one of the most polarizing categories of lost media within the community, and I, for one, have been on the fence about that for a long time. In my earlier days looking for lost media, I would often dismiss dubs right away, since most of the content was already available in English, so it felt pointless to search for. However, there have been a handful of dubs that I've come across over the past couple years that have greatly changed my overall opinion of the category, thanks to the topics being from series I enjoy, such as the Japanese Oswald dub, or alternate English dubs like the Animax dubs, which contrast with the original that I know so well. And for this topic, that intrigue continues with content that is so bizarre, it feels like it shouldn't even exist. We're going to be taking a look at Alsham Shoon. For those unaware, this series is essentially the Arabic version of The Simpsons, and for a really long time, I always thought it was just a dub of the series, but have since discovered it's so much more than that. For a series as popular as The Simpsons, it's no surprise to hear that it's been aired in dozens of countries internationally, and one of these places was in the Middle East, on Showtime Arabia and Dubai One's TV. These airings were of the original episodes in English with Arabic subtitles, and proved to be very popular with its viewers, which resulted in a media company called Middle East Broadcasting Center, or MBC for short, to take notice. MBC had plans to not only dub The Simpsons in Arabic, but adapt the series itself to better suit the cultural standards of the Middle East. The production went forward, and on October 4th, 2005, the first episode of Alsham Shoon premiered, with content that was very different from the original iterations viewers had seen previously. Some of the more notable changes include Homer's drink of choice being changed from beer to soda, all references to Judaism and Christianity removed, and even visual edits such as turning churches into mosques. Characters were renamed, and even the location of the show, Springfield, was changed to Rabia. There are also no episodes from the earlier seasons used in this adaptation, with the series beginning at season 4, though some episodes were skipped entirely, such as one where Homer dismisses the church. Despite the attention to detail that was made during Alsham Shoon, it wasn't received well by the viewers, and did poorly in ratings. It's been stated that the changes made to the original series were too different, And in a segment that discusses the adaptation from ABC News, executive producer Al Jean even comments that so many changes were made, it's not even The Simpsons anymore. There are even a handful of news articles from 2005 that report about the show's failure. So as a result of the low ratings and complaints, the series was pulled from TV after 34 episodes having been aired. This is only a portion of all the content that was made for it, as it's been stated that 52 episodes were produced, which leaves 18 of them unaired and lost. Though this is only part of the mystery, because the Lost Media Wiki article claims the series is partially lost, but doesn't tell you where the found episodes can be viewed. With a quick search, I did find a website that claims to have 29 of the episodes available to watch, but that still leaves several of the aired ones missing. In the comments section on the Lost Media Wiki article, a user mentions that there is a large market for bootlegs in the Middle East, so that could be a possibility to find the remaining episodes, but the unaired ones could be gone forever. While I'm sure most fans probably wouldn't mind if these episodes were not recovered, there's probably still a dedicated group that would, and that means contacting the crew that adapted the show, or MBC. While the network is still around today, contacting international companies about finding or releasing lost media is still an area of the community that is still in its infancy, and we don't have a lot of great ways of accomplishing that, which applies to many other topics as well. It does seem like Alsham Shoon had a pretty big boom in interest when users online discovered the show existed at all, so maybe more of its content could be found if the topic saw a resurgence.
It's always interesting to discover that there are pieces of lost media from a place you didn't know had any lost content, and the Philippines is a perfect example of that. If you search for Filipino lost media on the wiki, you'll find quite a few articles from that country and a couple topics that have become pretty well known in the community. Of course, Batman Fights Dracula is one of the more famous examples, which is an unlicensed comedy film that had a theatrical release in 1967 and hasn't been seen since. There's also Tokyo 1960, a lost kaiju film having been made a decade prior to Batman Fights Dracula and referred to as Filipino Godzilla. There is almost no information available online about it, only speculation about whether or not it's a redub, edit, or completely new film. However, the topic we're going to discuss in this segment isn't from the cinema screen, but a much smaller screen, the TV. Yes, we are going to be discussing a lost commercial that has actually been lost for quite a while and has piqued the interest of advertisement enthusiasts as well as people who like spooky lost media because this piece has some unsettling vibes to it. In the Philippines, there exists a flower shop called Encarnacion de Chavez, and sometime in the 1990s they produced what is described as a memorable commercial advertising their business. And it's because of this content that the topic became so well known. Recollections state that the commercial starts with a camera zooming into flowers in front of a dark background as the song Shepherd Moons plays by the singer Enya. This scene fades into another with a couple as text for Encarnacion de Chavez in Alex Brush font appears on the screen. This scene leads to two more that show more flowers until it finally shows a woman in a red dress facing away from the camera. She turns, smiles eerily, and holds flowers up to her face, which fades into the address of the flower shop. A narrator enters the commercial and concludes by saying, "When the occasion becomes special, you can make it more special with flowers," from Encarnacion de Chavez. Encarnacion de Chavez, when you want to show how much you really care. This description of the commercial and how spooky it appears has led to an increased interest in getting it unearthed as well as dedicated search efforts. The earliest mention of this commercial's existence dates back to 2000 on the Pinoy Exchange forum when the commercial was apparently still airing on TV, though currently no visuals from the commercial have been recovered. This has led to a debate about how accurate the details of the recollections are, including if the woman's dress was red or black or white. Some people even claim that the woman was played by Filipino actress Sita Astals, or that the song was not Shepherd Moon's. However, these have not been confirmed. The only details that we can be sure of are the channels where it would have aired, which are local channels of the Philippines and include TV5, GMA7, RPN 9, and IBC 13, as well as the general consensus that it aired in the 1990s through the early 2000s. Though, what's most interesting about knowing the channels it aired on is the fact claims have come forward mentioning programming it might have aired in between. This means if broadcast from this era could resurface, we would have a very specific time frame to look through. Though two other commercials, Family Rubbing Alcohol and RA Home Vision, that Encarnacion Bet Chavez is said to have aired with, are still lost. The other one, known as Anzal Urethane Car Paints, has been found, so there are a lot of good details that can be used to narrow in on where to look. One thing to keep in mind, however, when looking for the commercial is that a couple recreations do exist to give people an idea of what the real commercial was like, so be careful to not confuse the two. This was an issue during the search for Hitogata, a lost Japanese PSA. If you are interested in helping out or have new information, the Lost Media Wiki Discord server is featuring this topic in their On the Hunt search, so be sure to stop by.
It wouldn't really be an international lost media video if we didn't talk about the BBC at least once. I'm not a huge fan of the BBC or its lost content, but I've come across some topics by accident before, and the stories behind them, as well as their reason for becoming lost, are really interesting. One of my favorite topics from the BBC that I've covered before was the sad story of Henry, which was the first ever TV adaptation of the Railway series books. This production was created by the BBC back in 1953 and was broadcast live where several issues occurred, including a train derailment that required a human hand to place it back on the track. There were plans for a second broadcast, but it never happened, and to this day, the original has never resurfaced. Since the broadcast was poorly received and is so old to begin with, there's a pretty good chance the recording is gone. And today, we're going to talk about another BBC recording that is probably gone, from the Doctor Who series. Despite its popularity, I've never covered Doctor Who Lost Media on the channel before. But the topic I've picked for today is one of the most elusive and desired episodes of the classic era. It dates back to 1965 and is titled The Feast of Stephen, the 7th episode in a 12-part serial, which is mostly lost in itself, but has been partially found. Some of the episodes that have been recovered include 5 and 10, which were found in a church basement, and episode 2 was recovered by a BBC employee who saved it from being scrapped. The Feast of Stephen, however, has not been so lucky, and as stated in a blog post from Lovarzi, the BBC issued a destruction order for the episode in August 1967, along with the rest of the serial. This is what the BBC has become infamously known for, wiping their archives and destroying the only documented copies of some of their work. And specifically in the case of The Feast of Stephen, the episode was broadcast on Christmas Day and acted as filler for the holiday season, so it wasn't a main episode of the series, and that means it wasn't duplicated for overseas distribution, so the chances of other copies being out there are greatly reduced. In fact, the few episodes that have been recovered were believed to have been sourced from Australia, who never even aired the episodes because they were deemed too violent. There's also a rumor stated on the Lovarzi blog, which makes mention that William Hartnell, who played the Doctor in the lost episode, was given a copy as a Christmas gift, but 54 years later, that copy has never been found, so the claim only exists as a rumor. While the consensus for this episode to resurface is very unlikely, there have been a handful of images saved during the original broadcast. If there's one thing to say about Doctor Who fans, it's that they're dedicated to the series, and have recovered some really hard to find content before. Apparently, A few private collectors are even known to have missing episodes in their collection, so it's possible these or The Feast of Stephen are still out there. I think that's one of the coolest parts about international lost media, is that even though the content might be scattered around the globe, the goal remains the same and the methods we have to use to find it are the same. The only difference is the added challenge of making contacts with people in different countries and sometimes in different languages. But that can make each search more exciting and more rewarding as well. I hope the lost media community can continue to grow internationally and get more fans interested in their own country's lost media. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to check out some of my other lost media videos. Thanks for watching, and until next time, Finn.